And so I know we have to report and we have to get the numbers and we need some of this data, but unless it drives to actual meaningful engagement connection, nothing is ever going to change. So I love when you talk about this difference between authority and influence. Everybody thinks, man, once they get that little placard on their desk or their door, they are king shit. And you're not. You're not any better. In fact, you're probably worse because some of those people think less of you because you're in that position. Prove them wrong by actually caring about them. What's up, brother? Great to be back for an AMA with you today. Hope all's going well for you, man. How was Father's Day?
It was good.
You worked.
In
true fatherhood fashion, you busted your ass, it looks like, on the property, on the house.
All day, yeah. I literally woke up this morning, my back hurt, and I was super sore. And I was like, maybe a little too much. How about you?
It's funny there. I took it easy. You know, the kids came over. It was my ex-wife's weekend, but we're really cordial and working together. So my girlfriend and I spent some time in Zion National Park over the weekend and had a great time. We took the e-bikes through Zion National Park. It was amazing. I didn't know how much I would like it. It was better than I thought it would be. So we did that Saturday. And then even though it was my ex's weekend with the kids, like I said, we're cordial. So she said, hey, I'll bring the kids by at 9. So I spent the day with them. We went to like Fiesta Fun. Every town has one where it's got arcades and bumper boats and go-karts and things like that, right? So we went and did that. They wanted pizza, so we have a little pizza oven, an uni pizza oven. So we all did our own little personal pizzas, played some lawn games. So it was good. And it was a good day. Like, can't beat it. It was a good weekend, actually.
Sounds awesome. Yeah, I just worked my ass off, berated my kids to try to get them to work, and ended the day being pissy and moody. It was not an effective Father's Day.
In true fatherhood form. It's like, this is Dad. Yep, this is Dad. No, it's I watched a comedian on Instagram. I'll have to figure out who it was right off. I can't remember who it was right offhand, but he had done a little sketch of the differences between Mother's Day and Father's Day. And the mom comes in and she's like, I'm so excited for all the wonderful presents for the entire week of Mother's Day. And the dad comes in and he's like, all right, hurry up. I'm going to go mow the lawn. So I need you guys to hurry up with this thing so I can get out 20 minutes tops. Like, I got to go mow the lawn. And then, the mom's got all of her gifts and her like bouquet of flowers and elaborate presents. And the dad gets this little card on a folded 8 by 11.5 sheet of paper, and it's like,
by one of his kids.
Happy Father's Day, Dad. You're awesome. And he said, this is funny. He says, oh, this is great, kids. It looks like you spent just about as much time making this card as you did on me making you. Just funny, man.
Hilarious.
The differences between just men and women in general, the celebration. And I'm not by any means saying I want a bigger celebration. I'm just pointing out the differences between the sexes, which to me is hilarious.
Yeah. It's super funny. All right, man. Should we get in some headlines? We got some good ones, I think.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. You're up.
You don't know about mine. I think I've got a good one today. I'm pretty confident. It's a good one. It's also disturbing. So this one's from June 14th. So I think it was Friday. Coming from Fox News, the headline is House passes defense bill automatically registering men 18 through 26 for the draft. So this is part of the NDAA, which is the National Defense Authorization Act. This is something that takes place every year, and it establishes the annual budget for our military spending. And in it, part of it was this bill that automatically, like I said, registers men 18 through 26 for the draft. Now, a lot of people are up in arms about this, and I don't like this either, because anytime you get the government involved in this even more, it only gets worse. It doesn't get better. But one thing people do need to know is the selective service, which is what it's actually called. Most people know it as just being, the automatic registration, right?
Yeah.
So
when you turn 18.
Right. So the selective service is already mandatory for men between the ages of 18 through 24. it's mandatory. Yeah. But when a young man turns 18, he has to enroll in selective services.
Now, is that so if he identifies as a young man or just biological men are required?
I don't actually know the answer to that question, but that's a very, very good question, actually. So I don't know the answer to that. But there's a couple of things in here. Like one thing that was notable to me with this NDAA bill is I'm trying to find it here. Largest ever military pay raise in history, 19.5% increase for junior enlisted troops, and a 4.5% increase for others. So there's that. It also has funding for a few new submarines, establishment of a drone force within the U.S. Army, which I think makes sense. But here's what really got under my skin a little bit. Not only the automatic enrollment, and the talking point on this is that it will save money by automatically enrolling these young men versus them have to register.
Got it. So I didn't catch that. So the difference is you and I and my 3 boys, they got a thing in the mail and they had to register. This is auto-registering
correct
young men. Got it.
Okay. And it extends it out another 2 years.
2 years.
Because right now
24.
it's mandatory for 18 through 24-year-olds. Under this new bill, it would be 18 through 26.
Got it. Okay.
So now I do want to be clear. If you did not register for selective services between the ages of 18 to 24, you could be charged with a felony.
Yeah.
So it's serious business.
Yeah, it's not
But
something
here's what really
skip.
got to me. No, you've got to do this. So this one comes from, this bill was led by Representative Chrissy Houlihan, which makes sense. It sounds a lot like hooligan. And she's a Democrat out of Pennsylvania. This was passed, it says here, the committee passed this in an overwhelming 57-1 vote. Here's a quote from her. By using available federal databases, the Selective Service Agency will be able to register all of the individuals required and thus ensure that any future, focus on this, any future military draft is fair and equitable, Houlihan said during the debate last month, according to Defense News. I'm going to read another thing of what she said, but I want to focus on that
based
fair
upon
and equitable.
Percentages of race.
That's what you would think.
Yeah.
Right? That's what that would mean. So let's say, for example, and I'm ballparking, I'm not exact on these numbers, and I'm overgeneralizing here. But let's say that there's 60% of the population, I think it's probably lower, but 60% of the population in the US is white, let's say. And let's say 19.5, I believe, roughly, I could be off, is black. So equitable distribution based on race alone would be 60% white, 20% black. That's what you would think. But anytime the government gets involved and starts using the words fair and equitable, you pretty much know it's going to be exactly opposite of that.
Yeah, or
because what's going to
manipulate
happen
it.
is there's going to be protected classes. There's going to be minorities. There's going to be other classes based on sexual orientation would also be a protected class. I mean, we're in Pride Month right now. These are protected classes. And so fair and equitable doesn't mean equal. That's where people lose the argument a little bit. They think that equitable means equal. It doesn't. Equitable means equal outcome, not equal starting point or level playing field. So what the government will do is when they're trying to achieve not equality but equity is they'll play with the numbers. They'll manipulate the data. They'll fiddle with everything in order to create what they would deem an equitable, fair outcome as opposed to equitable, equal input. So that's where I get concerned, is when a government starts talking about fair and equitable, you're really starting to blur the lines between a free market, capitalistic republic and socialism, communism, etc. She also says this will allow us to rededicate resources. Basically, that means money. Thank you. Thank you, congressmen, for telling us that dedicating resources means money. We're not retarded. I know you think we're a lower class of people, but thank you for explaining that to me. Towards reading readiness and towards mobilization. So rather than towards education and advertising campaigns driven to register people. So what she's saying is that we don't need to dedicate all this money towards advertising campaigns and recruiting opportunities to recruit young men into the military
at a choice,
because we're just going to enlist them.
Yeah, at a choice and agency, we'll just dictate it instead.
And here's an idea. Why in the world, this is not rhetorical, but why in the world do we have the lowest recruiting and retention numbers that we've ever had throughout the history of this country? It's not because we're not registering people for selective service. It's because of this woke agenda. It's because of organizations like the Navy adopting this gay pride flag, this LGBTQ plus flag, into their marketing campaign. And instead of telling people, an army of one, come here to learn discipline and dedication and serve a noble cause. Instead of that messaging, the messaging is, come here and find out about yourself. Express yourself. Be a fucking individual instead of being a member of the team. This is what we need. Look, I believe in rugged individualism. I do. As long as it's all directed towards going towards the same objective. That's true diversity. People will say, well, diversity is power. Diversity alone is not power.
Yeah.
Okay, if you've got me, a white, straight Christian male on, and you have a gay, black atheist on the podcast, and him and I are co-hosts, is that going to make this a better podcast necessarily? No. Yeah, we're just going to be fighting the whole time.
Yep.
Like, there's no unification in our vision, to your point. But if you bring me on as somebody who grew up in a single parent household, middle class, lower middle class, I would say, from a very small rural town in southern Utah, but I believe in manliness and masculinity, and then you bring on another man, white or black, I don't really care, who grew up in the city, maybe came from a family with both a mom and a dad there, maybe a little better economic status, and he comes on, but he believes in masculinity, and he believes in the power of having men, good, righteous men, and then we discuss that from differing viewpoints, but we're moving in the same direction. That, to me, could potentially represent powerful diversity. But you have to be unified. And we have a military now that is not unified in purpose. I mean, I don't know how many percentage of the people in this country even believe that America is even worth fighting for, to be honest with you, the way it is.
Yeah.
So these things, like, I think you can massage and manipulate and use some clever words. But at the end of the day, when you start talking about a government deciding what's fair and equitable, you have this woman, hooligan right here, telling us that treating us like idiots, this will allow us to rededicate resources. Basically, that means money towards reading readiness and towards mobilization. This is going to go south. It's probably not going to pass, quite honestly. And I looked at this, and I'll get off the soapbox here. It's probably not going to pass in the Senate because there's some other. Of course, this is ridiculous. But it says here, of course, and I think that should be illegal. But it says, unsurprisingly, the legislation coming out of the House today is loaded with anti-LGBTQ, anti-choice, anti-environment, and other divisive amendments guaranteed not to pass the Senate. So they throw a bunch of other stuff in here. Like, vote on one thing.
Yeah.
And let us tell you as our representatives what we agree with or what we don't agree with. And then you can pass a separate bill for something entirely different.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's my headline for today.
Yeah. I like it. All right. A couple weeks ago, Joe Missoula, he's the head coach for the Boston Celtics, during an interview, and this was roughly I think it was just a couple weeks ago or a week ago, the interview went like this. He was asked this question. For the first time since 1975, this is the NBA Finals where you have two black head coaches. Yahoo Sports reporter Vince Goodwill said, given the plight sometimes of black head coaches in the NBA, do you think this is a significant movement? Do you take pride in this? How do you view this, or do you see it at all? And then Joe replied, I wonder how many of those coaches have been Christians. And if you've seen this, it was like 10 seconds of silence. No one knew what to do with it. And what I love about this is a great example of how he sees himself and how he sees the world. What's important to Joe? Not his skin color.
Yeah, his belief, his faith.
His faith. That's it. And this is his way of saying, I actually don't, that didn't even cross my mind, because I'm more interested in if someone's a Christian or not than if they're black or white. And I loved it. I was a great example of someone that is just not jumping onto the common narratives and looking beyond skin color. And he obviously is defining himself more around his beliefs and his moral compass than he does anything else. And it was awesome.
It was so good. I saw that clip, and my thought when I saw the clip is, like, right when it came on, I didn't say, oh, there's a black guy. Like,
isn't that funny?
It's funny to me that we're even having this discussion, because look, I'm not saying there aren't racists out there. There are.
Yeah.
But do you know anybody who's like, oh my God, that coach is black?
Wouldn't it cross your mind?
Yeah. It didn't even cross my mind. Did I recognize that he had darker skin than me? Sure. I mean, obviously.
Yeah.
Just like I would recognize somebody who has blonde hair over black hair. But I wasn't upset about it. Like, this just doesn't happen.
Totally.
But I think the media really plays it up, especially in sports. And I know that might be a little bit, I don't think it's racist necessarily, but it's stereotypical. But this is I don't know, is he a basketball coach?
Basketball coach, yeah, for the Celtics.
I mean, come on, like,
you would assume
really
that most of them are black anyway.
I mean, come on.
Totally.
I don't know why we do this. Like, we all have to beat around the bush and pretend like, oh, I don't see race, and just call it like it is. It's not racist. I don't know what the percentage is, but obviously there's a significant amount of men in the NBA and college who are black. Yeah. And
yeah, it's more.
Who cares?
It's more odd to maybe see a white guy than it is seeing a black guy.
Totally.
Yeah. It's funny.
Yeah. The other, I don't really know who this guy is, but I've only seen 2 clips. I saw that one, and I saw one months or maybe a year ago, and a reporter had said, hey, how was it having the royal family at the game? And he's like, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph? Because that's the only royal family I acknowledge. And they're like, no, the royal family from England. He's like, oh, I don't know anything about that. I didn't really notice they were there. This guy is so good. He is so good. I love it.
Super awesome.
I love it.
Yeah. All right. Should we get into some questions?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it today.
So Matthew Nilsson, excuse me, his question, what kind of tips would you have for effectively and efficiently going through from a section leader of 5 to 7 employees under his command to a warehouse supervisor of 40 plus employees under his command? I'm temporarily being promoted to this position, just interviewed for a full-time job in this role, and I wanted to be successful and lead those under me to be just, if not more successful than I am.
First things first, congratulations. That's a good move. Upward mobility. I love it. That's exciting. Second thing is, as you go from, let's say, 7 to 40, you're not going to know these people as intimately as you do the 7. So there's going to be a large disconnect. So here's what I would suggest to you. As quickly as you can, out of the 40, identify the 4 to 5 leaders in the 40. They're going to be the ringleaders.
Yep.
They're going to be the people other people ask questions to. They look to. They're solve
already
problems.
Leaders.
They put their head down. They're already doing it.
Yeah.
And you got to manage these 40 people. But your job now is to get to know the way you know your 5 to 7 people to get to know your 4 to 5 people out of the 40 and get them on board with you. Share with them. Ask, this is even more importantly than sharing. Ask questions of them. Tell me about the way you guys run this. Tell me about what works. Tell me what doesn't work. If you were in my position, what would you do differently than you're doing today? Why is that not working the way it is? Not accusatory, but inquisitive. Help me understand the culture here. What do I need to know that I'm stepping into? I don't want to step on a hornet's nest. I want this to be a good thing. What do I need to know that I don't know or can't see, or maybe corporate doesn't fully see what's going on? Man, you get the 4 to 5 leaders that are already in the group on board with you, not by explaining all the wonderful shit you're going to do, but by believing that they are capable, strong leaders. Even if they don't have the title, they're going to help you manage this.
Yeah.
Be humble. Ask good questions. Don't go in there swinging your dick around thinking that you've got all the answers. Let these people tell you and build up rapport with those 4 to 5, and the other 40 to 50 or whatever it is will follow suit.
Yeah. You will be tempted to think you know. And I just want to call out what you just said. You don't know. You're not going to know. So stop assuming that you and your ivory tower have all the insights of what's going on. Mark my word. You think you do, but you don't. Right? And until you're asking the questions, you're not going to. This has been an eye opener for me of late, Ryan, because I've always struggled with being in a position of authority and thinking that regardless of where you are in the org structure, you can have a really big impact on all the employees. And I used to generally speak that or believe that. And I actually don't think I agree anymore. And it's really just based upon what you just said, is you can't know them. And there's a big difference between being a position of authority and being a position of influence. And be careful, because your authority comes with a stick. And you can make movements and you can do things, but you don't want to be influencing people using your position of your position of authority. You need to be using influence. And at 40 people, you're just not going to have that type of influence, period. I had a conversation with a guy in the IC years ago, and I love this example, so I'll share it. It was one of the mentors, and he was struggling with the battle team leader listening to him, right? He's like, I ask him to do this stuff, and he doesn't follow up, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, are you in a position of influence? He's like, yeah, I think so. I have these coaching calls. I tell him what he needs to improve on. I'm here to help him. And I go, how's his wife? How's his kids? I don't know. Then you don't have influence, right? I think it's Dale Carnegie. No one cares about what you have to say until they know how much you know or how much you care. Guess what? You can't have a solid, caring relationship with 40 people. That's why you need to delegate, and you need to have those fire team leads in place that they can do that they can understand what's going on, and then you can trust them. It's not because you don't care. It's just, it's not possible once you have so many people underneath your command.
Well, I mean, what else do you say? Well said. I actually, there is one thing I was thinking of as you said that. When you talked about knowing these people and building influence with them, you talked about how's their wife, how's their kids. You can't game this. And I think a lot of people will try to do it as a manipulation tactic.
Totally. Good call.
It's like, hey, Kipp, how's your wife? And you're like, oh, she's having a hard time. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Anyways, how's the numbers?
Yeah.
It has to be, really, tell me about what's going on. I had a call with somebody in you said the IC, the Iron Council, for those of you who don't know. I had a call with a guy who's been in the Iron Council for a while, and I'll keep this pretty vague because I don't want to let on any names here or anything like that. But I had a call with him for some performance discussions inside the Iron Council. And I knew that him and his wife were going through a very difficult time. And so I got on the phone with him and I said, tell me about what's going on. And he started going through the numbers. I mean, not the numbers. Tell me what's going on with you guys.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, here's what's going on. Here's this and this and this and this. And man, we had a really good discussion about his own personal life. And then towards the end of the call, he said, hey, so about the numbers. I said, I don't want to hear about the numbers. He's like, what? I'm like, we'll talk about that another day. I was calling for you. If you want to email me the numbers or we want to talk about it next week, we can do that. But I want to talk with you. And that wasn't manipulation. That wasn't me trying to, weasel my way in to build up any sort of false influence with him. I actually care about the guy. Like I genuinely care. He's a friend of mine. I genuinely care about his well-being. The numbers, we'll get to that stuff. That stuff can always be addressed. I thought about this even, man, if I were to die, let's say I had a call with him and I were to die 24, 40 hours later, what's going to be a greater impact? Me getting the numbers from him or me actually caring about what's going on in his personal life? This is something that actually takes place a lot in the LDS church. There's the concept, I don't know what they call it now, Kipp, tell me, but it's
home teaching.
Home teaching.
Yeah.
They changed it, right? It's something else? Or is it still home teaching?
Yeah, I think it's still home teaching.
Maybe you're supposed to. I don't need to know these things. You're supposed to know these things. Anyways, the concept is good. The concept is that you take a man of the ward, right, which is the community, the congregation, and he has 2, 3, 4 families in the neighborhood that he's responsible for checking in on, following up on, serving, making sure everything's good, answering any questions, just helping. Fellowship is what we would call it.
Yeah.
And all congregations have the concept of fellowship. But the problem is that so many people get so wrapped up in the numbers. Hey, did you reach out to your families? And you're like, yeah, I got a hold of 3. I have 4, but I got a hold of 3. Okay, 75%. Bro, it's not 75%. Stop writing that down.
Yeah.
You're treating people like garbage. Instead of saying 75%, why don't you say, hey, okay, how are the 3 families that you saw, how are they doing?
Is there anything?
Oh, this and this and this. Here's what they're struggling with. Here's where they're doing well. Tell me about the one family you didn't get a hold of. Well, I couldn't get a hold of them because the husband and wife are going through a divorce right now. And the husband moved out. He's moved across town, or he moved to a different state because of work, and the wife's all alone, or whatever, whatever the situation is. She and he, the husband and wife of that situation, they're not the 25%. Those are real people.
Yeah.
Dealing with real problems. And so I know we have to report and we have to get the numbers and we need some of this data, but unless it drives to actual meaningful engagement connection, nothing is ever going to change.
Totally.
So I love when you talk about this difference between authority and influence. Everybody thinks, man, once they get that little placard on their desk or their door, they are king shit. And you're not. You're not any better. In fact, you're probably worse because some of those people think less of you because you're in that position.
Totally.
Prove them wrong by actually caring about them.
Yeah. And that authority hurts us sometimes. I'll give you an example. I used this example on Friday, literally Friday in a leadership meeting. I used this example where if I go schedule a meeting with a friend and worker, like, in the report structure, right? Individual contributor. If I schedule a meeting with them for next week, that employee's going to have anxiety for a week leading up to that meeting. Why? Because of my position of authority.
Uncertainty.
They're on their heels going, what the hell? Why am I having to meet with Kipp? And why? Because I'm not in a position of influence with them. They just know me as an executive. So you got to be mindful of that. One thing that you said, Ryan, that I think is so profound around not faking it. This is in anyone in the leadership role, such as this brother, this is what you need to believe. And it may not be true for everybody. You got to believe this. And I pulled up a presentation that we did for our leadership here in the Iron Council. People want to have a significant impact. They want to be utilized and contributing in meaningful ways and being challenged in the work that they're doing. Fact. Everybody wants to have significant impact. So that means when they're not quote unquote performing, when one of those 40 employees is dropping the ball and they're not doing something, you can't jump to, oh, they are a crappy employee and there's something wrong with their character. Your job is to believe in them. And then what you said, Ryan, go ask the questions. What's going on? How can I help you? How do I support you better? You have to believe in people, because if you don't, the minute I don't believe in you, Ryan, and I go make that phone call and go, hey, dude, how's your family doing? You can smell it a mile away. You don't give a shit about me.
Right.
And everything else is just going to be a lie. Oh, I just want you to be successful in your job. No, you want me to hit certain numbers so you don't look bad. Like, everyone knows. So you have to really believe it. You have to believe in people. And by the way, that's a psychology error. They call it a fundamental attribution error. When you attribute people's lack of performance to their character. And you'll hear this all the time. Well, you know, Ryan, that's just the way he is. Oh, yeah, that guy, that's the way. That's all lazy thinking is what it is. Critical thinker goes to the table and goes, talk to me. What's going on? What am I not doing as a leader to assist and support you, and et cetera?
It's good, man. Hey, one thing I'm gonna say another thing. We can go on and on about this all day, but I think this is really important. No, don't be sorry. This is really good stuff. And look, I always tell guys too, if this exact scenario doesn't apply to you specifically, obviously I get that. Figure out how it applies to you. In what ways are you a leader, and can you take the principles and concepts that Kipp and I are sharing today and apply it to your specific situation, even though you may not be managing 40 people? But here's one thing that you talked about. You said, hey, can I talk to you? An employer or a boss or a supervisor or team leader saying that to an employee. Can I talk to you next week? Now this person has a week to fret over what in the world's going on. And anytime we assume, do we assume favorably or unfavorably?
Always unfavorably.
Unfavorably. It's always unfavorably. So don't ever leave your people in the dark. And this goes for you as husbands too. Let's say you want to talk with your wife about something. An inappropriate way to do that is, hey, hon, I'd like to talk to you tonight. I have some things I want to share with you. See you in 8 hours.
or
that's not fair.
Yeah. Or I have a really tough conversation to have. See you later. Yeah.
Yeah. I love you. Hope you have a good day. What an a-hole. Women and men do that to each other all the time. It's very selfish. It's just not
thoughtful,
respectful.
Yeah.
It's thoughtful. That's probably a better. You're just not thinking of how the other person might respond to that. Instead of saying, hey, I need to talk with you about something very important tonight. See you at 5 when you get home. I actually think you should prepare somebody a little bit. So here's how I might say it. Hey, hon, I was going through the money situation today, and man, it looks a little tight. I think we're going to be okay, but I'd like to talk with you tonight about how we can tighten things up over the next 30 to 60 days to make sure that we're going to make sure ends meet over the next 60 days. Not upset or anything. We just have a few things to lock in. Can we do that call tonight? Yeah. That's way more thoughtful than, hey, we need to have a talk about money. You good for 5 o'clock tonight? Come on. Like, there are better ways to communicate. And if there's any sort of breakdown in a relationship, whether it's romantic, platonic, professional, it's the ability to communicate effectively. So be thoughtful and respectful to your people, and don't just put them out there, string them out to try to assume what's going on. Give them a little bit of help so they don't think. If you go to your wife and say, hey, man, we're having a hard time. We really need to talk tonight. Dude, she's going to think you've cheated on her. She's going to think you're asking for a divorce. She's going to think something catastrophic maybe happened to one of the kids, or you got fired. She's going to think the worst of what's going to happen. And it could be simple as, hey, do you want to go on a date on Thursday night or Friday night? But don't do that to your people.
Yeah. I'm laughing just because I'm thinking of all the times I've totally did that. Yeah, we need to talk.
Well, it's great. This
advice.
Is the difference. And I think it's important to know your people. I'm an anxious attachment style. That's my personality. So you have avoidant, you have anxious, and you have secure. And in some things I'm secure, and other things I'm anxious. I'm never avoidant. That is not in my vocabulary, is not in my personality. So when somebody says something, overthinker triggers. Like, what could it be? What's going on? What's wrong? Worst case scenario, catastrophic, at the end of the world, because I'm an anxious attachment. So it's important to know that about your person too, because that will help you communicate more effectively with them.
Next question, Dimitri Golovin. My wife and I are expecting our first baby middle of December. And I think Dimitri, I follow him on the gram. He just got married too. No idea what it is yet. We're holding off on getting our first scan done until the second trimester. I hold both yours and Kipp's opinions at high regards, and I wanted to ask you both if you have any advice for first-time fathers. Also, is there anything you would have definitely done differently? I know you can't cover all bases, and podcast covers plenty, but it'd be awesome to know if anything in particular sticks out to you guys now in hindsight. Thanks for all your help and guidance over the years.
When he said, I don't know what it is yet, the first thing that came to mind is it's a human. I'm pretty sure it's a human. I don't know why. I don't know why I thought that.
He's in a funny mood, Dimitri. That's funny for him.
You're laughing?
Yeah, fair enough.
At me. All right. So that's my dad. Maybe my dad side of me.
Dad
coming
joke
out
for today. Yeah.
For sure. We should start with. We should incorporate a dad joke into these too.
Yeah.
Advice for first-time fathers. I have two things that I would share with you. You're going to hear a lot, and a lot of it's good, a lot of it maybe not so good. But when you're a new father, the connection that you have with your child is not nearly as strong as the connection that she will have with the baby. She's actually considered herself a mother for 9-10 months now, because she feels this baby in her womb growing, and she's the one sacrificing to add nourishment and growth to this baby. It's so incredible. So she feels so deeply connected. And maybe there's even an emotional connection based on hormones and biology.
Sure.
And I don't know.
Yeah.
But obviously there is for a woman, but I'm not sure if that translates to a baby as well. She hears the baby, he or she hears the voice. Like, of course, there's got to be. So I think it's harder for a man to be as connected to a baby as it is for the mother. And that's okay. Like, obviously there's things that you can do, but the first bit of advice that I can give you is to be very, very supportive of your wife, because there's actually not a whole lot you can do for the baby currently. That's not to say there isn't anything. You know, there's a lot. You can talk to the baby, you can touch the baby and develop that physical connection. You can play with. There's a lot. Read to. There's a lot that you can do, but you can't nurse the baby, right? You can't. There's just so much there, and so I think in the early months, the best thing that you can do is obviously try to formulate that connection with the baby, but really try to serve her and make it as good as you can for her, because she's going to be tired. Postpartum is a big thing that women deal with. There's all sorts of medication that women are taking now that weren't as common 30, 40, 50, 100 years ago, that messes with their hormones and their mood. And so if you can be supportive, if she's going to breastfeed, then she's the one who's going to have to get up every 2 to 3 hours and nurse the baby. You can't do that. So you're going to be able to sleep. That's going to be she's going to have some resentfulness towards that probably. So if you can do the dishes that are sitting around the sink, do the damn dishes. In your case, you don't have other kids. You're a first-time father. But if you have other kids, get the other kids out of the house for a couple of hours. Like, go bowling, go golfing, go for a walk. Like, do whatever so she can have her time. You know, if the baby's napping, it's like, hon, why don't you take a nap too? Me and the other kids are going to go do our thing. Whatever you can do to help facilitate this transition process for her, I think is going to be really advantageous, obviously for her and the baby, but I promise it's also going to help you in the long run. It's going to work for you too.
Yeah.
The only other thing I would say outside of the normal advice that you get is your job now is to render yourself obsolete. Your job is to put yourself out of work. And as a baby, an infant, a toddler, maybe that's not as applicable as it is for a child who's 7, 8, 9, 10, 16 years old. But you need to start wrapping your head around the idea that it's your job not to coddle and not to make life necessarily easier, but to introduce hardship, appropriate hardship in controlled environments so they can go out and do their own thing. Now, inevitably, when I say that, there's always a select group of people. Actually, Frank Foreman is a person who said it the other day because I offered this advice on Instagram. And he said, well, it changes as you're older. Of course it does. And I'm not saying just by rendering yourself obsolete that you're going to be completely out of a job as a father. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that I have 4 kids. My oldest is 16. I don't want to get a phone call from my 18-year-old son in the next couple of years saying, hey, Dad, I need money for rent. Hey, Dad, I need you to bail me out of jail.
Yeah, prepare
Hey,
them.
Dad, I got this woman pregnant. Can you, what do I do? I don't want that call. Now, we'll deal with it if it comes up. But my job is to make sure over an 18-year time frame that I'm doing everything I can so that I never get those phone calls. Not for my own sake, but for the sake of my child. So you need to introduce them to hardship. Again, as a baby, what can you do? Not a whole lot, right? It's not like, oh, they're not going to eat as much because they need to know what it's like to be hungry. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. Okay, do it appropriately based on their age. But that's my advice.
Yeah,
I hope that lands.
I think, I'm surprised you didn't say this because I've heard you give this advice before, so I'm stealing from your playbook. But don't give up on yourself. Right? We have a tendency sometimes we do it when we get married, then we do it when we have our kids of all of a sudden I don't have guy friends, I don't go to the gym and all these other things. So
Dimitri spends a lot of time focused on his personal. I know Dimitri spends a lot of time on his personal health, so don't let that slip. Good call.
Don't let it slip. And then also let go of the expectation of how it's going to be. It's going to be different. And I think I didn't do this with our first couple kids, but I certainly did it with the other kids. Dude, get one of those baby strap things that you put your kid on and do everything with your kid. You don't have to not go for a walk. You can still go on hikes. You can still do all these things. You're just going to have to do it a little bit differently. And so don't adjust. And those things are good for your kids anyway. Right? Get them out and about and with you and all that kind of stuff. And then the last thing is probably the biggest lesson I ever learned as a parent. And I didn't learn it until, child 3 was a tad older, that my wife and I, we are different. My role is different than her role. And I need to embrace and celebrate her feminine, her extra empathy, her caring and lovingness. And she also needs to embrace my masculine approach to parenting. They're not at odds with each other. And that is super important that you guys get on the same page, that you're not going to be the same, but you're both providing value in your unique frames of feminine and masculine. Otherwise, what will happen is you guys will be butting heads that you're not parenting exactly the same. Now, you need to be supportive of each other, but also embrace the fact that she's bringing something to the table that you don't and that you're doing it as well.
I think the perfect illustration of that, Kipp, to a very small degree, is the moment that you start teaching your son or daughter to ride their bike.
Yeah.
Okay, that 5-year-old, 6-year-old, I think that's about right.
Yep.
Is about the time where they're on the training wheels, maybe bump the training wheels up a little bit, maybe take the training wheels off. And so the first time they fall, 2 things are going to happen. You're going to rush over and you're going to say, get up. Mom's going to rush over and she's going to try to pick up the child and kiss her boo-boo and put a Band-Aid on it and all that kind of stuff. Neither are wrong, actually.
Yeah.
I don't think either approach is wrong. One is more appropriate than the other at a certain time, but they're not wrong. So a dad needs to be able to put his hand up and say, "Hun, It's okay.
Okay. Let him be.
I got this. Just stand by for a second. And then you, as the father, go over and you pick the child up and you say, hey, dust the thing off. I always told my kids, don't, like, because baseball, I'm like, don't touch it. Don't rub it. Don't touch it. Mm-hmm. That's a sign of weakness. Just leave it alone. So they would want to. I'm like, don't. I'd tell my kids when I coached them, like, don't. They'd get hit with a fastball in the back. I'm like, don't touch it. Pretend like it didn't hurt. That's the best thing you can do. And so I'd say, now it's time to get back on. So we get back on and we work back up the courage. And then when we were done, I'd say, okay, go see mom. And they'd go inside and mom would wash them off and literally kiss their knee and put a little SpongeBob or whatever, Dora the Explorer Band-Aid on her leg and do the thing that she needs to do. And that was lovely. That's beautiful. And also what I did was also beautiful in the masculine, right? Yeah. And so I really appreciate that you said we honor both of it. And then the other thing I was going to say is with adapting, don't change your life. Like I saw this woman the other day at the pool. She was probably like 8 or 9 months pregnant. I mean, she was about ready to pop.
Getting after it.
And she was awesome.
It's awesome.
She's out there playing with other kids. She's got a bikini on. I'm like, good for that woman. Like she's just living it up. She's playing with other kids. She's swimming around. She's about to pop. She probably feels horrible. She feels bloated, I'm sure. She feels miserable. She's hot. She doesn't want to be out there. Her husband's probably annoying the hell out of her. And she's still out there doing her thing. And then I see other women who have babies and, you know, they're out camping and they're out exercising and they're out living their life. And I see other women who are like, oh, my baby, it needs to go to bed and you can't come over and see anybody because my baby. I'm like, oh my, it's a baby. Like it's going to adapt to your life.
Yeah.
Obviously within reason, but let the kid adapt to your life. It will, I promise you. But gosh, you bring up some really good points there. I think we've addressed 2 questions. We're almost up on time. So maybe we can speed this up a little bit on my end.
All right. Ian McMadison.
It's not you, Kipp. It's me.
No, it's me too. If you started again from nothing, how would you do it all different business-wise? Started again from nothing.
I'm pretty happy with what I did. I don't think I would do anything else. So to answer your question, what do I feel like I did right? I felt like I networked really well.
Yeah.
I'm a good networker. I know what people need. I can see where their pains are. I'm very empathetic that way.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that probably comes from how I was raised with my mom. Is she was very in tune. And I think with her, bless her heart, it was to the extreme. It was a detriment at times. But I think I picked up enough of it where I could be pretty in tune with when people were off or something was wrong or there was a problem. And then combine that with my ability to problem solve, I could begin to see the pieces like, oh, Kipp is struggling with this. And, oh, this guy's struggling with this. Wow, what if I got those 2 people together? They could solve their problems together. That requires a level of selflessness, right? If I introduce you to so-and-so and you guys do business.
Not about you.
And honestly, and I'm saying this very, very, trying to say this very humbly, I've made other people millions of dollars over the past decade of doing this. Literally millions and millions of dollars. I have yet to have received my check. But that's not why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. And also, I know that if I help, as Zig Ziglar would say, and I'm paraphrasing, enough people get what they want, I will inevitably get what I want.
Yeah.
So I was a really, really good networker early on. And a lot of that probably came from my financial planning practice and building a word of mouth business and operating solely on referrals. So I developed a lot of that skill coming into this, but I wouldn't do a thing different. But that is one thing that I think really set me apart from the pack.
Yeah. What I'm about to say is perfectly aligned with you. Know what you're good at and hire out the rest too. Right? Like when I look back, when I sold my book, and then what I really stepped into was an established sales team. Within a couple months, I was like, shit, man, if I had my own sales team, how much money would I have made? Right? Like it was obvious to me that I should have doubled down and built a sales team earlier on in my business versus me trying to do it on my own. And if I would have done that, success would have looked drastically different. And I think the lessons learned there is because you might be a great salesman, so your advice would be different, right? So I think for me, know what you're good at. Know what you're good at. And if you're not good at it, and I've heard you say this, right? Hey, I'm not good at that, so I'm going to hire that out. Identify what those are. Don't think, well, I'll just handle it myself, because then you'll be hindering yourself probably for a period of time as well.
Well, that begs another question, and I'm writing this down. How do you know what you're not good at? I'll tell you this. You hate it.
You don't enjoy it. Yeah.
Like, there's things. We've got a guy, Steve Baumgartner. He's a CEO. He's a manager type. Like, he's very structured, very organized. He creates systems, and sometimes I'm like, Steve, I can't even speak that language. And I hate it. Like, not I don't like it or it's not enjoyable. I hate it. All I want to do, if you guys want to know, all I want to do is I want to podcast and I want to get behind the camera and share concepts and insights in the Iron Council. That's the only thing I want to do. Now, I do a lot more than that.
Yeah.
But that is the only thing I want to do.
You enjoy. Yeah.
Because I love it. I enjoy it. It's fun. It's energizing. I don't walk away from this podcast, Kipp, going, oh, God, thanks. I'm so glad that's over.
Yeah, I never do either.
I walk away from this like, that was awesome. Like, oh, we talked about this and this and this. And, oh, man, we could have talked about this and we didn't. Like, I walk away energized from it. And those are really good indicators that you're good at something or that you can be good at it, and you will never be good at it if it's something you despise.
Yeah. That's a good point. All right. Hello, Mr. Davis. How would you handle a manager from a different department trying to manage you during a collaborative project?
I don't know all the specifics. I'm assuming based on what you're saying, he is not above you in the hierarchy of the chain of command.
Yeah, I'm assuming a peer.
Then you need to. So you need to direct it very clearly. So I'll role play with you, Kipp. Hey, Kipp, we've got this project going on, and I'm very excited about it. You are too, right? Like, what are you excited about?
I'm excited about telling you what to do because I'm more seasoned.
And look, if you said something like that, here's what I would say. Hey, you know what? I welcome it. Man, if you have insight that's good for me, please feel free to share. Can I ask you a favor, though?
Absolutely.
Just share that with me directly.
Don't undermine me on my team.
Because I don't want to undermine the structure of the team, and I don't, and I'll share it with the team, but I would appreciate if you came to me first and let me address any critique or suggestions that you have. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
Like, we don't have to get offended about anything the person says.
Yeah. And you don't have to
be
do
assertive and bold.
Yeah, and take their feedback for consideration. Doesn't mean you have to do what they coach you about.
Yeah. But let's say you gave me an answer that would be more likely, which is like, oh, I'm excited about increasing revenue or whatever, right? Say, oh, man, I think you and I are going to work together. Great. I've been really excited about the work that we've done over the past 2 weeks, but I do have a concern. Can I bring that up with you?
Yeah.
And look, this is not meant to undermine you or say that I don't appreciate what you brought to the table, but I'm having a hard time with the way that I feel when you communicate with me in a certain way.
What do you mean?
And the way that I feel when you tell me things, but you make it so matter-of-factly, I feel like I'm not as appreciated for the expertise and knowledge that I have, and that my suggestions and ideas aren't being taken into consideration. And I don't think you mean it that way, Kipp. I really don't. I just want you to know how I feel when you communicate it that way.
Yeah. It's so great. Why? Because you just coached me. And I'm self-evaluating going, interesting that how I'm coming across might actually even affect Ryan in ways that I never even considered for myself. Yeah.
The beauty of this is that you are not going in with Operation Shock and Awe. Like, you're not going to burn the building down because he said something that offended you. And it could just be as simple as that. Yeah. Maybe you are thin-skinned. And you need to be aware of that too. I've been thin-skinned. Like, people say stuff onto me social media all the time, and I'm like, oh, and I just want to like torch everything. It's like, well, hold on a second, okay? Maybe that guy just sucks at communication, which is probably accurate. In fact, I think more often than not, when it comes to communication, the percentage of individuals who are out to get you, this guy, I don't think, unless I'm completely mistaken, the odds are he doesn't dislike you. He's not out to get you. He doesn't think less of you. He doesn't hate you. He doesn't want your job. He's just not good at communication.
Or so damn focused on himself that he's just trying to look good. And every opportunity he gets to prop himself up a little bit and see if he's providing value, he's doing it. That's it.
So when he does something you like, you don't call it out in public. You call it out personally. And you say, hey, Kipp, we're in this meeting and I brought up a suggestion or I brought up a directive, and I've thought a lot about this. I brought up a directive. And what you said was basically completely antithetical to what I suggested. And that's part of my responsibility with this project. And so I wanted to talk with you privately because I think these types of conversations, not that they shouldn't be had, they certainly should, but it's more appropriate that you and I discuss these things in private and then we come together as a unified front to our team. So you have my commitment that when I don't see things your way, I will always approach you directly, and I would appreciate the same level of respect from you. Is that a fair request? You have to get him to say yes. Yeah. Of course it is.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So in the future, if you see something that maybe you don't like, you'll come to me. You're comfortable with that?
Totally.
Great.
Yeah.
Problem solved. And then if he does it again, then you remind him, hey, Kipp, remember when we talked a couple of weeks ago and we said that we would you do this in private again. You said we would discuss these things privately. You remember that conversation? Well, that isn't what happened today. Can you help me understand why?
Yeah.
Like, you can be assertive without being accusatory and let the person explain, and they'll walk themselves into traps. That's the other thing you have to know, is that a guy who's actually not being honest or sincere, and I think most people are, but even if he's not, he'll walk himself into a trap. You don't have to do it. He'll do it himself. You just let him run the course, and you kind of exacerbate the process by letting him talk and explain. But that's how I would handle it. What would you add to that, Kipp?
I'd add nothing to it. I think it's spot on. I mean, the reality of it is your follow-up is critical, I think, because often we won't do that. Or I talked to Ryan about this and did it again, and then we'll never address it. Man, people take reps, period, to learn and to adapt and to change. So you got to stay on top of it, right? So when it doesn't happen, you have to be like, hey, remember what we talked about? Help me understand. How do we get back on the same page here? How do I support you better in making sure that we're not undermining each other? And I love, I'm not really adding anything here. I'm just regurgitating what you've already said, but I love the idea that owning your interpretation of the action and not using that to attack them. That's so critical. We've done this, right? Hey, Ryan, I'm sure this wasn't your intent, but when this happened, I interpreted it or it made me feel this way. Right. And I'm sure that's not what you meant, but it's good for me to let you know that that's my interpretation of that kind of action. No one's going to argue with that because I never attacked you. I owned how I felt about it and I just communicated it. That's not that big of a deal. And as long as you take that approach, whether in marriage or in the workplace, your ability to communicate drastically increases. It goes south when you're the problem. And I come to you and say, well, you always, and when you do this, and it's about you. No, you own your interpretation. And then you can ask them to make some adjustments.
Kipp, there is one little pitfall that I see happening in this, because I've had this situation happen where maybe you come to me with a problem and you do that. You're like, hey, my interpretation is this, and then me as the person you're communicating with gets super defensive and almost agitated and aggressive.
Yeah.
Where it's like, well, dude, you're reading it wrong. What?
Yeah.
It's not what I mean at all.
Stop being so sensitive.
Why are you doing that?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, like you need to lighten up. Like, stop acting like that. We've got a thing to do and you're being a baby about it. I've had people do this.
Yeah.
And in those moments, the answer to that, to role play again, is, hey, look, I can see that this is not going in the direction I want it to go, because our mission is to complete this project and generate revenue from the business. And the discussion we're having right now is not leading to that objective. I think it's important we bring this up. And I do appreciate you, which is why I wanted to bring this to your attention privately together with the idea of coming towards a resolution. But I can see that's not going to happen right now. But I just wanted to express how I felt. And maybe we need to revisit this again when we can have a level-headed discussion about it. Yeah. This is how men communicate. Mm-hmm. Like all the guys that listen to this, not all the guys, but a lot of guys, they want to be the alpha, right? They want to be in charge. They want to. This is how men do it. No, I'm saying they want. I don't think they want to be a dick. I think they want to be acknowledged as the leader of the pack.
Got it. I see what you're saying.
And the leader of the pack is not a dick. He's not authoritarian. Now, you'll get away with that for a little bit of time, especially if you're working with passive, weak people.
Yeah, you bulldoze people.
But the minute you come across, the minute you come across somebody assertive, they're going to rebel and create a mutiny against you.
Yeah.
So an assertive man can address problems head on, but do it respectfully, not passively, not timidly, but respectfully communicate what he needs and how he feels and how a different course of action will lead to the combined objective.
Yeah, that's great. All right, we got a good question to wrap up here.
Okay.
Dan Carter 54, the importance of self-development as a man and the importance of it has on your relationships with your spouse.
Well, the first one just goes without saying, right? Like, do we even need to answer that? It's crucial, obviously.
Yeah.
And I think that, Kipp, one thing you shared a couple months ago at the Uprising was you said when you start doing jujitsu, it's hard to know that you're getting better because everybody else around you is also improving. And you use the analogy of an escalator. You're all on the escalator. You're all improving, but you're improving at similar rates. And so until some outsider comes in, you don't really know how far you've progressed because you're fighting against the guys. And look, here's the thing. If I train with one guy long enough, I already know exactly what he's going to do.
Yeah.
I don't need to worry about that sweep because I know he's going to do that. In fact, I'm going to try to get him to do it because I know he's going to do it, and I'm going to try to capitalize on it when he does it. It's the same thing with inflation, and I'm going to make a point here in a minute. With inflation, if inflation is 3, 4, 5, 8%, it's historically high right now. If it's as high as it's been, but you're making the same amount of money that you were before, you're not just
you're making less
coasting neutral. You're actually dollar for dollar. You have less spending power. You didn't not get a raise. You got demoted. You got a decrease in wages by real dollar standards.
Yeah.
Okay, so the same is true when it comes to self-development. If you're not improving, you're not neutral. Everyone around you is getting better. We're all getting smarter. We're getting older. We're collecting more resources. We're deploying those resources more wisely. And if you're not doing those things, you're getting lapped fast.
Totally.
So that to me is why self-development is so important, is because if you're not getting better, you're getting worse.
Yeah. Well, and
what was the second part of the question?
And the importance of it to your relationship with your spouse in particular.
Oh, yeah. Well, you are called to lead as a man. And you can't lead from behind. So here's one that's a hard thing for guys. When women are making more money than guys, she's more valuable in that regard than you are. And you can't lead her. How are you going to lead her to make more money if she's making more money than you? How are you going to lead her to be more fit if she's more fit than you? How are you going to lead her to be more disciplined if she's more disciplined than you? Now, granted, I want somebody who's successful and who's fit and who makes money. Like I like all these things. This is what I would look for in a woman if I was in the market. But you need to constantly be improving yourself so that you can help guide her and take her and walk her hand in hand to a place that you two could not imagine going on your own. And isn't that what you want? Out of a relationship, to go somewhere that you've never been before? That requires you to always be improving and getting better and leading from the front. So that turned into a little bit of a monologue because we lost Kipp there, but I think he's jumped back on. I was talking to myself there. I was just about to close the meeting down, but man, it was profound, Kipp. So you should go back and listen to it.
I'm sure. Well, I listen every week anyway, just to hear myself. But I'll listen to you.
Listen
talk
to me
too.
this time. Yeah, listen to me this time. You might learn something new.
Oh man, yeah.
I basically said if you want to lead her, then you have to be out front. I mean, you can't. Yeah. And there are going to be things that she's better at you then good. That's okay. Like there's nothing wrong with that. She's going to be the leader in that department.
Totally. Well, and I love that you made the correlation between leadership and personal development because they're the same thing. I was just speaking with someone about this the other day. They're like, oh, personal development versus leadership. I'm like, leadership development is personal development. If you're developing yourself, what is a leader? The ability to impact and influence others in a positive way and lead others. Isn't that a great self-development? And they go hand in hand, right? We in the Iron Council, right, in our leadership development principle or pillar number 1, lead by example. Why? Because you can't impact other individuals if you haven't figured out how to do it yourself. You can't establish trust, build up competence, right? And all these other influence with other individuals. So you have to tackle it yourself. And this is why everything that we do within the Iron Council, I think, is profound. What are we talking about? We have our 4 pillars that more or less say, come into the Iron Council and get your shit together. Show up powerfully and sharpen the saw in a way that you become the best tool possible to lead and support those that you love. And the best way you do that is getting yourself in check. Your finances, your relationships with individuals, your health, your emotional well-being, all those things allow you to serve other individuals. I don't know about you, but like when I look back at my past of who I was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, am I in a better position to actually be a better spouse and a better husband? Absolutely. And it's because I've been trying to just improve myself. And as I become a better person, I'm better for those in my life. It's just a natural byproduct and it levels them up, just like on the mats, right? The best way I could be a training partner to you, Ryan, is not to be passive. Best way to be a training partner on the mats with you is to have my jiu-jitsu solid and to be really good at my jiu-jitsu. That's the only way I help you with your jiu-jitsu. But if my jiu-jitsu is crap, and I train with you a lot, is your jiu-jitsu any better? No. If anything, it might even give you a false sense of how great you are.
It feels good to me. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, you're like, oh man, I'm so good, until you actually train with someone that knows what they're doing, and they're like, man, I suck. I need to get a new training partner. Kipp is not helping me out here. So, and that's the power of tribes. This is the power of banding with other individuals and being around like-minded individuals, because we're on the escalator and we all improve together. And that's what the guys see when they join battle teams within the Iron Council.
I think what you said is spot on, and I think 99.99999% of people who listen to this podcast resonate with that. Where I think we lose people is in the macro, that's what they want. Like they want to be a better husband. They want to be a better dad. They want to make more money. They want to look better. They want to start the business. They want to achieve their own physical goals. They want all of those things. What so many men fail to equate is that it's little things, micro things that you do today that define that. So I've done it myself. What you eat today is actually what's going to define that macro for you. So if I decide to eat like garbage, then I'm not moving towards that final result of being that better father, husband, business owner, community leader. What time you woke up today defines you long term. It may not feel like it because you may say, "Oh, I'm tired. Like I can sleep in. I had a long night. Like I'll catch up later." No, what you do right now defines you, who you are. If you are lazy right now, then you're a lazy human being. If you are gluttonous right now, that's because you're a gluttonous human being. If you are taking advantage of other people, even small little things that don't seem like that significant, then you are a bad person. Because what you do is what defines you. So if you say to yourself, well, I want to be a loyal man, then you're going to stop talking with that woman who's distracting you from your real relationship. If you say, I want to be a man who's fit and strong and bold and capable, then you're going to put down the Big Mac that you just bought. You're going to throw it out the window on your way back to work, and you're going to go get a salad somewhere. Because that's what those kind of men do. Fit men eat healthy. Loyal men don't talk to other women inappropriately. Good business owners make smart financial decisions. People who are financially successful invest in their financial knowledge and abundance. So make small decisions today and tomorrow and the next day for the next 365 days. That's inevitable. You're going to become the man that you want to become. It's all those little things where you're like, oh, it's just this. It's just that. This is okay. Oh, that's harmless. No, it's not. It all plays a factor. Anyways, the reason I brought that up, Kipp, is because the micro things, we call those tactics in the Iron Council. And the tactics are the things that we do on a daily basis. What time you get up, what kind of food you eat, what kind of communication you have with your wife, how you lead your boss, how you interact with your kids, little things on a daily basis that inevitably drive you to the man that you want to be. And we talked a lot about the Iron Council. We did because it's open right now. So if you're ready for enrollment and to do those tactics well so you can improve who you are in the macro, go to orderman.com/Iron Council. I cut you off, Kipp. You had something else to say.
No, I was going to do the segue that you were just saying is like that's the power of the IC in regards to breaking down those tactics, but it's also the accountability around it. And that's the other benefit of what we're doing because you can listen to what we just said and like, okay, I'm going to do those things. But talk about elevate your game when I need to report back to my team and like-minded, high-caliber individuals around if I did them or not. And not only that, if I'm getting blocked and where I'm struggling and have people speak into me and provide advice and direction and guidance around what they've done to get past some of those hurdles that we often get confronted with when we attempt to level up in life. And that's the other added benefit of being on those teams.
Yeah. Well, guys, you got your marching orders. I hope we gave you 5 good answers today. It seems like we only got through 4 or 5 questions.
It's because you ran on those headlines.
I was excited, man. I'm excited about all this stuff. Like I said, this energizes me. So anyways, go check out the Iron Council, guys. We'll be open through the end of June. You can do that again at orderman.com/Iron Council. Kipp, I don't think I'd be as energized if I didn't get the chance to talk with you about this stuff on a weekly basis. So I do want to tell you that I really appreciate you as a man, as a friend, as a co-host, like having you here in this mission, not just on these calls, but it means the world to me. And I don't think I share that enough with you. So I just want you to know that. Somebody had made a comment the other day. I had posted some pictures I had taken, and the guy posted a picture of you smiling. And these are professional headshots. And he's like, why can't you be more like Kipp? And I said, in sincerity, Kipp is one of a kind. I could never be like Kipp, but damn if he doesn't make me want to try. So I appreciate you, brother. It means a lot to me.
Thank you. Appreciate it, brother.
Yeah. All right, you guys. We'll be back on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.